Back in 1989, a man by the name of Tim Berners-Lee, later to be known to be Sir Tim Berners-Lee, had a dream about a decentralized network, a network that was spread across the world. So he created the World Wide Web. It was so ahead of its time that no one really knew how it was going to be used. He wanted his creation to be a gift to the world. He never patented his technology. He wanted to make it so that no one owns it. That it was a gift to all of humanity. He wanted no government or business to control it and run it independently on themselves. He wanted it to be free and open, a place where we could share information between us with no barriers. What people imagine is that every single business will have servers that will run their application or their websites or their technology. They'll independently have their own hardware. From the little businesses that have a repair shop, they'll have a little server in the back room, a little computer, very basic, that will run their website, to Netflix, who will have massive data centers just for their Netflix content. So they'll have servers upon servers upon servers of just Netflix computers that will run their entire catalogue across the world. Maybe have a couple of these data centers, but nowadays that's not really how it works. The internet is a lot more centralized from what people think and what Tim Berners-Lee hoped it would be. But is that necessarily a bad thing? There's something called cloud computing. Cloud computing is a centralized data center, or there might be several of them, so nodes across the world, but not by any means. These are not small data centers. They're not hosting just one company or one thing or one technology or one application. They're hosting things across the board. In these data centers, they will have thousands to tens of thousands of servers. Data centers much bigger than that of football stadiums, and every single square inch of it will be either hallway or servers. Servers on top of each other and next to each other for miles on end. In fact, some of these places are so large that the employees are given bikes or scooters to actually use inside the data center because they're so large that they have to get across somehow. So to give them a bicycle would be the fastest way, and the least dangerous way. You don't want to be giving them a Ferrari in a data center. It just wouldn't be very safe. These servers are powerful, really powerful. They're packed with the top end hardware. For example, they will have Xeon processors, up to 96 cores per server. That'll be with 2 sockets, so 48 cores each. These are $10,000 CPUs, very expensive. These servers will also have over 300 gigabytes of EEC memory, so server grade memory, very expensive. The network will be 10 gigabit at least, all the way up to 100 gigabit. So that will be running 100 gigabit between the servers, not broadband, so not the internet. You can't be streaming your stuff at 100 gigabit. But if you was to run a broadband check, you would get very fast broadband. If you was to run a speed test, you will be seeing it in the gigabytes. Every single one of these servers, if they got 96 cores, can have up to 96 independent VMs running on them with 1 core per VM. So one physical server may be, you know, a fairly large size, but it can have up to 96 virtual machines running them. If you was to have them as physical machines in independent businesses, they would obviously take up a lot more space. They'll be a lot more spacious. They'll fill up a large room, whereas just one server could fill up a rack or a couple of rack spaces. These virtual servers will be charged to the client on a per hour, a per day, per month, per year, or a fixed term for 3 years or 5 years and so on, for a fixed price per hour, per day, per month, per year. And you can turn these on whenever you like, or turn them off whenever you like. The client has full control over the virtual machine. They can host applications, databases, process large amount of data, host websites, push notifications through text message, do complex machine learning, so AI, real-time analytics of Internet of Things, so there are hundreds of millions, if not billions, of devices which has data that needs processing, and that can be pushed out over the internet to these centralized data centers and process that information on a mass scale. These data centers can run any operating system that you choose. You can have pre-selected operating systems, pre-built ones, or you can upload your own images on certain selected VMs. Instead of running a full server, so say Windows Server 2016 OS, you could just run an actual application within what's called a container. So you don't need to pay for the operating system or get charged extra per hour for the operating system license. You can just purely run an application inside a free container. Metric tons of data is backed up to these data centers for both consumers and corporate businesses. So the iCloud, for example, is backed up to obviously the cloud. There's three big players within the cloud market. There is Amazon, which has Amazon Web Services. They host companies such as Netflix and Expedia. They have roughly 40% of the market at the moment, but that seems to be growing somewhat. Microsoft has Azure. They host companies like eBay and the iCloud for Apple. They have roughly 15% of the market. Google is a third. They host about 7% of the market, and they host Best Buy servers is one of their big clients. What are the benefits for using this instead of locally hosting it themselves? There are benefits for both a small user, so say a small business, all the way up to a giant like Netflix, which has 30-50% of all the web traffic in the world is Netflix content, because so many people have Netflix and they go up to 4K streaming. So much of the world's internet is being used for that. One of the main benefits is the price. So the price that you pay for these virtual machines works out a whole lot cheaper than if you buy the physical hardware yourself. So Amazon can buy servers a lot cheaper than a small business can, even for the same hardware, just because they can buy so much more of it. These data centers are more efficient to run, so the actual electricity that they'll be using will be cheaper because they'll use so much more of it that you get economies of scale deals. So they'll place these data centers in a more cheaper location just because the energy is cheaper where they will be. Security is a great benefit. So let's say if someone broke into one of these data centers, they would not be able to tell what is on what server. So if they wanted to get into, say, financial records for one of the banks, they wouldn't know where to look for the actual drive which is storing the information, because of security. These places are usually well guarded, top security inside. Probably one of the best reasons to go on the cloud if you're a large business is the scale at. Say you're Netflix and at 3 AM in the morning 50 million people are watching your programs. So why would Netflix pay for servers that will be capable to run up to 500 million streams instead of just 50? At 2 AM they know there's no chance that they're going to get 500 million streams when most people are asleep, and there's no chance for them to get those numbers. So they can scale down their operation, and not, if they're paying per the hour, they don't need to pay for 80% of the servers they need. So during that time period it works out a lot cheaper for them. They reduce their cost by 80% for the servers. They can have this on time periods, so when they know that the demand is going to increase, they can then scale it back out and then turn back on these servers that they need. And let's say if they get to near capacity and all of a sudden they've got almost 1 billion people watching, they've never had that many people before watching these streams, they can then scale out even further to meet demand, and it'll be an automated process. As soon as the servers get near the full load, they'll start creating new VMs to host the Netflix application. There's redundancy built into every single VM, so if a VM goes down, it will then create a new one with the previous information, in case it was like a hardware failure. So if the actual host itself went down, the physical host went down, it would create that VM on another machine somewhere else. So if that was in the same building, it would create it somewhere else. Or if the entire building, the entire data center went down, they would create it in another data center, hopefully in the same country. If it's not the same country, then the neighbouring country, as long as that was allowed. So you can pay per the hour instead of having one big cost for the infrastructure costs, which is a lot more affordable for a lot of businesses. It doesn't show up on your cost. It's more over time instead of one great big hit. So helpful for small businesses as well as large. Certain VMs don't require licensing costs, so you get a reduction in your per hour fee or your yearly fee for a VM. So if you choose to have, say, containers, which can run an application in a container, so you don't need to pay for a Windows license because it's not using Windows. Hardware is routinely upgraded, so every couple of years they'll swap out the old the old servers for the new ones, so they get more powerful and efficient servers, which helps their bottom line as well as helping the people that are running their applications on their servers. It's a managed service, so you don't need to hire a team or hire a person who can manage that infrastructure for you. So you don't need the people, don't need to spend the costs on it, and you get real experts, industry experts that can run it on your behalf. There's a decrease in risk, so say if you're a small business and you keep very important data on your server in the back room, and say if something happened, say if that server failed and you lost all the data, or say the building went up in smoke and you lost all that data, important data that you may have needed, or it's something that your business may rely on, might be something critical. There's great competition between the free cloud providers, with more coming. They're just the big three, and they obviously compete against one another. So they have to offer great prices to beat the others, as well as more features to outdo each of the others. So it probably sounds like quite a dream. It's like, why would anyone like to run servers on their own local infrastructure? Why not run everything in the cloud? What's the need for it to be running local servers? But there are problems. Data centers and entire cloud offerings have completely failed in the past. So for AWS in March and in June, AWS went down for everyone, and a lot of the internet went down because of it. So things like Netflix stopped working globally because the servers weren't there, because they had a downtime, an unplanned downtime. These companies can also run out of infrastructure themselves, so if they can't supply the servers fast enough to their network by matching demand, then people can't create new VMs, so new businesses can't get onto the network, create their virtual machines, or people can't scale out their operation. Then all of a sudden Netflix can only stream to 50 million people instead of 500 million people when they've got 200 million people requesting streams, which might overload the other servers and then bring problems to the 50 million people that are watching it. Security is a little bit of a concern, so some people can't put their information onto the cloud because of security. So things like government information, military secrets, company secrets, they don't trust the cloud for their offering because it's off-site. Sometimes the actual data centers aren't located in the same country where the data has to be legally, so some data you can't send abroad. Here in the UK, we're okay with that because both Microsoft and AWS have data centers in the UK, so they don't have any issues with that, and they are cleared up to very high top secret information now by the government. I believe the Ministry of Defence puts stuff into Microsoft Azure. Don't know what it is, particularly. They might just be random office stuff that doesn't have any importance. Now, is this really a good thing? Is this a bad thing? I mean, the free market's deciding that's where we want to put our stuff, so who are we to say this isn't a good thing? I mean, if it turns out to be a bad thing, people will leave and use their own stuff locally. Could always use some more competition. Right now there's only 3 big companies, so having more companies involved, large scale companies that can handle the economies of scale and the investment required to do this, that will always be nice. There is a slight concern that so few companies have such control over the world's infrastructure, financial services, critical requirements for our society. So say if they go down, then all of a sudden no one can get their banking information. Emergency services may stop working if their stuff is hosted in this cloud, so that could be an issue. Say if these companies went rogue, or they had a rogue employee and they started messing about with the stuff which they control, so that's a risk. Like I say, don't put your eggs in one basket. So if we put the world's critical infrastructure into the hands of one company and that company goes down, that's going to bring a whole lot of issues about. From an environmental point of view, because of these VMs, there's actually less physical hardware that's required because they're sharing resources, so they're using less parts, so that's good for the environment. Therefore less electricity as well, so less fossil fuels. A lot of data centers are linked to solar farms as well, so there's always a constant demand for electricity required. So instead of getting it directly from the grid, they can get it from their own solar farms or wind farms. Very doubt very many data centers will have wind farms though. But solar farms, there's definitely data centers out there with wind solar farms. Personally, I am all for this. As long as there's going to be more companies getting involved, make it better for the consumer, make it safer as well, for the risk of loss. If you think this discussion has been interesting at all, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ding that little bell icon, whatever that does, I don't know. Why don't you find out? Who knows? Thank you for listening. Hope it's been interesting.